Hey there, paper geeks and glitter nerds, it's another Crazy Geek Crafter, and this is part 1 of 6, in which I make a portfolio for all my memories from my study trip to Edinburgh in Scotland. Now, it's been a few years since I went. Okay, it's been a lot of years, but I've had all these brochures and tickets and things, and pictures of course, lying about, and wondered how to display them. And now I've fallen for the idea of the Folio, which is, in my opinion, an album with flaps. There are some people who have decided that's what this thing is called, so that's what we're calling it. This is my first attempt at making one of these, so there will be some mistakes along the way. I've included everything. I tried to film everything also, but keeping this giant thing in the view of the camera is kind of hard sometimes, so there are going to be a few things you won't be able to see quite clearly. Also, I've included all the weird errors I've made in my folio. Since I am not just making the folio, I am designing it to fit with all the ephemera and things I have from my trip. This is a bit messy and maybe a bit confusing, but I hope you can follow along anyway. These 6 parts will be played over 3 weeks. It took me a long time to make this, and therefore you're going to take a long time to see it. So let's start with looking at some mock-ups I made before I got started on the actual album, folio. So here's the first one I made. I made this on the couch. It is a 1/4 scale. So I took A4 papers and cut them into 4s, and then I figured out how I could build my folio. And all these functions I tried out, I've seen in different videos on YouTube, but not all of them are going to make it into this folio. Also, because I have to make it fit with the elements I have that goes inside, and the pictures have a specific size that won't fit with all of these elements that I made in my trial template here. So it's a work in progress, but this is the first template I made. And here comes the second one, and it's very pink. Here we go. So I needed to know if everything I did was correct compared to the tiny one I made. Now these flaps are made for photos a tiny bit bigger than the ones in my Scotland folio. That's because the pictures I have from my trip to Milan is different. They are bigger, and therefore I would need bigger places to put the pictures. I have labeled all the papers with letters according to if they came from the same sheet of A4 paper, so that I could see how much I was actually using. I only made a test of one side of the folio, and then I decided I was ready. So here we go. I have my test measurements here for help to remember how I did want this to be. I want the back of the folio to be 4 centimeters, and then that will split into 2 sections that are 2 centimeter thick. But first we make the case. This is one side, and then I make the other one here, and then I'll glue together the 4 centimeter side. And I'll use collal glue for it because I want it to be very strong, but I dare not use it much in the album itself since it is a solvent glue and therefore might affect the photographs. So remember that. But I really wanted... I'm sorry. We are taking care of an extra dog this week, and they are so fun to have together. They bark a lot because one is deaf and the other one is just very protective. So back to the glue. This glue, I knew it was going to be dry by the time I put photos in this folio. That's why I dared use it on the back. But for the rest of the pieces, I'll use plain old PVA glue. In this case, Nuvo glue, but you can use any brand you want, of course. So I have the case done. So now to the, let's call it the A side. I want 2 flaps with 1 centimeter space for the bulk of everything I'm putting in here. And you're going to see what I mean later on when I start bringing in all the papers I have. Flyers, guides, receipts, photos. There's a lot of it. So that's why on this one I'm making an extra edge so that it brings it out. I believe this one is the 2 centimeter one. There. And then underneath I'll put one that is smaller. Or is it the other way around? Even I forget. And here is where I encountered my first problem. It was a tiny bit too big. Of course it can't be the full 21 centimeters. It needs to be a tiny bit smaller. So I have to cut it off by hand while still attached to the rest of the project. There was a lot of thinking with this, and there'll be more mistakes along the way. This will be easier when I get to the smaller flaps, because I can put them in my trimmer and trim it off in one go. But these flaps are so long they won't fit in my guillotine. And if you remember, my big trimmer has a tendency to not cut very nicely, so try to avoid using it. But here on the top you can see what I mean. This section is going to go all the way out in the 2 centimeter space that I have appropriated for this section. Now this one will sit underneath and have a smaller distance, so that it also has room for pictures and things, but also can fit inside the other flap I just put on. Here we go. So this is 1 centimeter. If you heard that, that was the very big horse who was staying here with me for a moment. No, just kidding. I love the guy, but he's very loud compared to the tiny dog I normally just have to shush. So I took up that few millimeters that I needed to make it fit in the folio. And now I can glue it in, and I have to try and get it straight. That's always a problem for me. But this completes the A side, so to speak. Each side is going to have some kind of feature to make sure I can fit all the photos of this certain thing on it. I have made piles on another table off camera where all the pictures and the things that go with them are waiting to be sorted into the folio. I also made little post-it notes so I can easily figure out how many pages I need and where to put them, just for it all to fit together. Just making a few notes here. This is a single page, and it only has the gluing piece. Of course, taking off that few millimeters to fit in here, if that was even a millimeter. And I want it over here, as you see. That will part the B side into 2 different sections of 1 centimeter each. And I'm having a lot of trouble with my glue, so I'm going to have to decant that in a minute. I cut that part out. I figured you didn't want to see me sit and decant one glue into another bottle. So we're getting there. I still haven't figured out how to close everything yet, and that is going to have to wait. So you see, this is the Nuvo glue in the other bottle. And I'll be using that bottle for the rest of the project. I do a lot of folding, unfolding during this project. I hope you don't get too seasick. But it's just, this is a process for me as well, to handle everything. And you're going to see spelling mistakes on these post-its. I can admit that. For some reason, my brain sometimes shut off and I can't remember which order the letters go in. I just know which letters I need to write something. It's often the ends that are hard. But here I'm just laying out everything, making sure I have enough pages for everything I want to make. I will be shuffling a few elements around later in the process, but this gives me a good idea of what I need where. And at this point I should be sticking bases on every side to make them stronger and to, decorate. 2 reasons why I didn't do it. First of all, I forgot. I was so excited getting all of this going that I just started making these different styles of flip-through mechanisms. So I made these templates for the photos also, so I don't have to handle them as much. Here I'm calculating how I'm going to make a waterfall feature. And since all of my photos is 12 by 9, I wanted an extra centimeter on each side, and this way the waterfall can accommodate both landscape and portrait style photos. Unfortunately, I am only able to get 2 out of 1 piece of cardstock, so that's a bummer. But it is what it is. You work with what you got, right? I do have a lot of scraps of blue cardstock left over. A lot of it I can use for pockets and stuff later on, but there's a lot of waste, and I didn't make this to minimize standard. A lot of people who make folios do it so they use every scrap of paper, but to me it's more important that it actually functions for what I am going to use it for. I guess I got a bit sidetracked there. The second reason why I did not put pattern paper on all the pages to begin with is that I didn't have the pattern paper yet. I bought a digital paper pack that fits with the theme, Scotland, and I was very excited, and I went to try and print something out, and it wanted a new ink refill thingy. And that was all good and fine. I bought one, the specific one it asked for, came home, printed 2, and an 1/8 of a page. And then it wanted another color. So I went back to the store. I told them I wanted a pack with all the colors so that I would be prepared for whatever it wanted in the future. It took a week for them to get it home for me. So it was a bit hard to stop the project, but I actually managed to stop myself for the week it took till I could actually print all the papers I needed. Having gladly forgotten all about pattern paper, I keep crafting. And now I'm ready to make a pocket for the accessories, let's call them that, for the Edinburgh Castle tour we took. It needs a pocket, so I'm just going to make a full pocket all the way across, since there are a few things in here, and yeah, it's my first pocket. I'm just going to glue it directly down. I'm not going to make flaps like I do for many of the other pockets for this folio. It has advantages and disadvantages, and yeah, either or is fine. I don't think I have a preference. I just got in a groove with making one kind, and then that was what ended up in the folio. I almost said album. Here's a different style. I call it the spiral, where you score the cardstock in halves, and then I remove one of the lines this case on this side, so that when you open it, you put it down, then when you open it, it opens like a spiral back to the full A4 page. And you can fold it in different ways, and you can also cut it on the other side if you prefer instead. So I don't know if there's another term for this kind of fold, but to me it looks like a spiral. That of course does depend on how you fold it. Here we go. And again, I forgot to check what I needed to put on this page besides the pictures, because I actually could have used a pocket in behind this element to store a brochure about the hostel we stayed at. But I didn't notice until, well, I think now. Yeah, this is it. I'm trying to see if I can peel it off. I can't. Well, I didn't have the pattern paper I needed, so I figured I would improvise. So I took some blue cardstock and I'm going to stamp on this one to get some pattern going. I did buy a stamp specifically for these projects. I actually bought 2, but only one will work in my opinion for this project, because it says holiday, and this was not a holiday, it was a study trip with the university. But this other one, it says that to travel is to live. It's a quote by Hans Christian Andersen, and I thought it was very fitting, since we learned a lot on our trip. Not just about Scotland and Edinburgh, but also about ourselves and each other. It sounds corny, I know, but that's how I feel about it. And some of these people I still talk to today. So it had that positive effect that we got quite close. I don't talk to much anyone else from my time at the university anymore, except for some of the people who was on this trip. Now here's one of the problems with putting an element on the card before you put the pattern paper down. Besides the strength the pattern paper gives the pages, it also makes it a challenge to cut out and work around said elements. I think I did okay, but it could have been neater. I find it best to make a paper template when you have to cut something tricky like this, because you can then adjust it before you cut the actual cardstock. And here it is. The digital scrapbooking, the Highlands cardstock that I bought off Etsy. As Redhead is the store I've used, as you see on screen. I didn't print all of the patterns, but I printed a few. And the good thing about a digital paper pack is that you can make more of the prints you really love, and you can leave out the ones you really don't. It's not that there was any of the prints I didn't like, per se. It was just, well, some of them I just liked more. There were no ugly ones. Maybe except for that very red one with bagpipes on it. And I didn't notice that there were bagpipes until I saw the same shape on another paper. Because to start with, I thought it looked like the digestive system, because it's all red, I think. So I didn't print that one. It's not that it's ugly, but if I get that association as the first thing when I look at it, maybe others will too. I don't know. With the majority of my pattern papers used, I think it's time to end this video. We'll hop on over to part 2, and then you might have to wait a little bit until part 4 and 5 comes out. But I hope you will join me on parts to come.